All right, Holly, you're all set.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to this morning's meeting and call the meeting to order. The time is now 9:01, and Stephanie is going to take attendance for us. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Adrian Cochran, I don't think she's joined us yet. Andrea Comer,
Present.
Ellen McKitterick.
Present.
John will not be joining us today. Mike Soltis
Present.
and Holly Williams.
Present.
All right, thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank any members of the public for joining us at this morning's meeting. And we are going to move on to our first item of business, which is a review and approval of the September 27th, 2024 meeting minutes. I'd like to ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. And a second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Thank you. We also have a second set of meeting minutes to approve. So I'd like to ask the committee for a review of the October 25th, 2024 minutes and call to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions?
I will abstain.
Same.
Thank you. We will note both Mike and Andrea for the meeting minutes. And so the motion carries. Thank you. And we'll move on to our actuarial quarterly update from the Spring Group.
Everyone, let's share my screen now. So good morning, everyone. The purpose of my part of the presentation today is to present the quarterly results. So these are the results for the period July through September 2024. So first quarter of the new fiscal year. So I'll jump right in. It's a similar format, pretty much the same format as we have presented these results in the past. Overall, if you look at the actual results, the beginning fund balance, it was at 628.7 million. So this is what we had as of June 30th, 2024, at the end of the last fiscal year. And first quarter results, net activity was minus 5.5, which resulted in an ending fund balance of 623.2 million. That compares to a projected fund balance of 630 million. So overall, about a $6.8 million difference between the two, which is about 1% lower than estimated. And if you look at the result, contributions themselves were about the same. Investment income was a little bit higher, but what drove down the result was more because of higher claims compared to what we had in our prior projection. So we had a little bit higher claims in the first quarter. I will caution it's only 3 months worth of data. So we typically don't have a lot of credibility if you're just looking at the one period compared to looking at a 9-month period as an example, or a 12-month period. But we did see that the claims were running a bit higher than what we had projected in our last projection. So overall, again, fund balance is at 623.2 million based on the reported results for this first quarter. The fund balance continues to remain strong. The reserve versus compared to net fund balance, the contributions compared to the net fund balance, and adverse losses in 1 year compared to the net fund balance. All of those metrics that we established a while back, we continue to be better than the targets. And so based on that, we would say that the fund balance continues to remain quite healthy. I'll move on to the next page. This page, we typically show this in a graphical format. It's the same result as the prior page, but in a graphical format. So the actual result, you'll see we have a starting fund balance of 628.7 million, total revenue. Again, contributions plus investment income, 117.7 million. expenses. So these are the claims and other expenses at about 123.2 million. So that's what makes up our $623.2 million ending fund balance as of the end of September. I'll mention that these are on incurred basis, so they are not on a paid basis. So I'm sure Dave will discuss later. These are on an incurred basis, which means it's net of any reserves for upcoming contributions or contributions for a period for the period that's passed, but are still expected to be received in October, as well as reserve for claims. So incurred claims that have not yet been paid. So that's all built into these numbers. Pause for a moment. We always show detailed results. I'll just point out one item here. The same result as the prior pages. One of the items we typically focus on is the reserve estimate for claims incurred but not yet paid. So we started the period at 53.7 million. We end the period a little bit higher at 57.9 million. So that's one of the reasons why we have a higher incurred claims number. And this is based on, in particular, primarily higher case reserves. So overall incurred claims that are known, as reported by AFLAC, there was a larger amount outstanding for claims that had happened very recently that's still yet to be paid. So again, we'll monitor this and we'll see how that trails off as these claims get paid and what happens to the reserve. But that reserve number is a bit higher compared to what we had projected before at 54.2 million. So we have a little bit higher reserve at 57.9 million. Still within margin, I'll say, but within the margins of error, but also, within regular fluctuation of this reserve. So we will expect to see this number go up and down a little bit. It's not dramatically changing, but it is a bit higher based on the data we received. Okay. I'll also provide this page here, which is the full year projection. So the column on the right-hand side is based on the prior results that we had presented again back in August in conjunction with the year-end work. So we had projected net activity of 34.5 million. And so based on overall beginning fund balance of 628.7 million with net activity, so all the contributions for the full 12-month period, and all the expenses, we would expect it to be at an ending fund balance as of June 30th, 2025, of 663.2 million. We have, based on these updated quarterly results, revised this number. So a new number shows net activity of positive 16.3, with the ending fund balance of 645 million. So those are the updated annual full year projection results. Okay, and that's reflecting a slightly higher investment income, again based on what we had seen for the first quarter. Contributions are about the same. Higher claims, so we bumped up our claims number, and then the other expenses are slightly lower, driven by lower admin fees. So overall, that works out to be about 16.3 million. So we have expected increase in the fund balance from 628.7 million to 645 million. I'll point out the contributions in particular tend to be lower in that last couple quarters of a calendar year, and then higher in the first couple quarters in the calendar year. So that first quarter, so January through March, is when we typically see the highest contribution. It's not linear. It's high in that first quarter, and then it kind of drops off. And one of the reasons behind that is people reaching their Social Security limit, and the contributions kind of being higher again because of that. So we'll see that as part of our quarterly projections. We typically see that. And the other comment I'll make is we are in the process of doing a more detailed claims review, as we had promised, when we did the year-end work. So now that we have more months of data, we're using data up to the end of October to conduct a more detailed review. And so as part of that, we'll also be updating the 10-year projection and coming back to you with detailed information around that and kind of the results of that review and what that's saying around the claims and as well as how that translates into the financial projections and the rate. So that's underway. More to come on that. But the purpose of this was just to provide the reporting for the first quarter. So that's what we're focused on here. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
You can go ahead, Mike. Oh, I wasn't sure if you were leaning in for a question.
No, no questions here.
Thank you for that presentation. I just had one, I just want to make sure that my takeaway was correct. So we are seeing what we had expected to see in the sense that incurred claims are increasing over time, which is exactly what we would have hoped to have seen relative to our last projections.
Yes, and not just
Okay.
increasing over time, but also increasing even at a greater level compared to what we projected. So we did assume an increase in incurred claims, but this is even higher than what we projected.
Okay, and when you provide the broader analysis, you'll benchmark it to what was assumed initially, and to the extent that we need to modify our projection growths going forward, that'll be part of that presentation,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, that's helpful. Do my colleagues have any other questions? I don't see any. All right, well, thank you
Thank
for
you.
your presentation this morning. I appreciate it. All right, Dave is going to take us through an update of the budget review of spending to date.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. We'll be going over the results through October. So let me share my screen. Okay. You all can see it?
We can see it, Dave.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Okay. So we'll start with the operating account, as we always do. For the month of October, our net activity was $3.9 million. That was $567,000 better than budget. We did have a few negative variances for the month. For example, our actuarial services were negative. I know Harindra's on the phone. That's not because he charged us more. It's just a timing difference. We paid it in a month that it hadn't been budgeted in. And as you can see, year to date, we're still better than budget. So that was just a timing difference. Also, DAS billed us for the services they provide, mostly HR and IT related, and they billed us for the whole year at the beginning of the year. We have budgeted straight line throughout the year. So that'll be a timing difference throughout the year, but it will zero out by the end of the year. And in fact, we'll be ahead of budget by the end of the fiscal year. Our fund recovery expenses were also negative for the month. There was some back billing that they had caught up on. So that's why it's negative. But it'll also be negative throughout the rest of the year, because the good news is our fund recovery efforts, especially through our third-party vendor, are going better than expected. So even though the fee will be higher, the corresponding revenue we have from penalties, as well as interest and the actual contributions, will more than offset that. And I'll get into more of that later because we actually have projections this month for the end of the year. So I'll explain that later on. The one significant positive variance we had was yet another timing difference. for IT software licenses. We were expecting to pay the Salesforce license this month because we normally get billed from the state. The state has not billed us yet. So we're just following up with them and finding out if that's going to be happening soon. But we don't expect, we do expect that to happen in the next month or so. That will even out in the next few months. Having said all that, year to date, we still expect to be over we know we're 1.7 million, over $1.7 million ahead of budget with a net activity of over $5.9 million. So that's what's happening in terms of our operating activity. For our bond activity, we spent $83,000 for our fund recovery efforts. That continues to be spent on some custom IT solutions that we're making to the fund recovery system. We were about almost $17,000 ahead of budget. Year to date, we are just under $100,000. But as time goes on, we do expect to be within budget by the end of the year. The bond funds available are $1,987,000. And as I've said before, we'll continue to be using that for fund recovery and possibly other initiatives during the year as we continue to use that bond money. Moving on to our contribution activity. For the month of October, it was $69,655,000. That was resulted in a negative variance of over $5.1 million. The biggest driver of that is the benefits being paid. That was over $5.4 million. As Harindra had indicated earlier, we are seeing increased activity and certainly an increase in activity versus when we first budgeted for the benefit payments over 6-7 months ago now. That tracks to about the actual activity was almost $34.3 million. That tracks to about $8.6 million a week. So that is a slight increase over the prior months. So we are tracking that, and we did work with Harindra on that to come up with an updated projection for the rest of the year that we'll share with you in a little bit. We did get the bulk of the contribution funds in the month of October for the latest quarter. We got over $108 million. That was a little less than we expected, about $338,000. That's less than 1%. But year to date, we're still ahead of the game at $2.6 million for contributions. And speaking of year to date, our activity is $76.1 million. We are less than budget by almost $15.4 million. And again, the biggest driver is benefits paid for the year. And we'll show you how that's going to pan out for the rest of the year in a little bit. Since we did get the latest contributions for the latest quarter, just wanted to show everybody how that compares to prior quarters. If you look at the third yellow stripe from the left, the latest quarter, we received $109.9 million for the third quarter of 2024. That is $3 million more than the same quarter last year, or 2.8%. Year to date, our contributions are $16.2 million, or 3.6% ahead of where they were last year. So the contributions are trending the way they have been in the past. You'll see each quarter of the calendar year decreases. That the primary driver of that is because as more people hit the FICA cap there's less people contributing into the plan. And so that continues to play out. So we'll see what happens the next quarter. But so far, so good in terms of contributions increasing every calendar quarter over their prior year. The fund itself has 642 point almost $642.2 million in it as of the end of the month. Quick look at the balance sheet. Our assets are $665.7 million. Most of that is the trust fund, and most of that is in the STIF account, where we have $609.8 million. The STIF fund is earning just about 4%. Nope, sorry, is earning just about 5% now. With the recent drop in the Fed fund rate, we do expect that to go down during the month of November. We did budget at 4% for the entire year. So in terms of investment income, we do expect to be ahead of budget for the year. But you never know what the Fed's going to do with the rate. So we'll see what happens with that, and we'll monitor it closely over the coming months. Okay, I mentioned that we are providing projections this month for year end. And so the projection for the operating account is as follows. We're projecting about $5.5 million of activity in the operating account, which is a $3.6 million positive variance over budget. What are the main drivers of that? Number one, our payroll and related accounts account for about $1.1 million of that variance. The main reason for that is the pension overhead rate. We had budgeted 60%, and the actual rate is 48%, if you can believe it. It's on the low end. So that's going to create a positive variance for us for the rest of the year. Another significant driver of that is our IT consultant expenses. There's a positive variance of that of over $1.6 million of that. We are using primarily bond money to pay for the consultants because a lot of the work that they're doing for the fund recovery system can be paid with bond money. So we're using that up first instead of the operating funds. Other positive variances include IT licenses of about $265,000. There are some licenses in there that we budgeted for that we don't believe will be using or are coming in lower than we had budgeted for. Our outreach and legal expenses will be $200,000 less than we budgeted, and that's because the Community Education Coordinator Initiative that we're starting this year has less organizations than we have budgeted for. We had budgeted for 12, and I believe currently we have 7 signed up. So we're going to start with those 7 and see how it goes. So since there's less organizations, there's less money that we'll have to pay them and less money for the legal work we'd have to do in contracting and setting them up and things like that. And the last major piece of that positive variance was $250,000 for the contingency that we budgeted for, but we're not expecting to use for the rest of the fiscal year. So those are the main drivers of the positive variance. We'll obviously be monitoring this every month and updating it as need be as we get more information that comes along. And finally, regarding the contribution account, as we've been mentioning all along, the benefits paid have been higher than what we budgeted. So working with Harindra and Vibha at Spring Consulting, we came up with an updated number, not only for the benefits paid, but for all the main drivers. And so our net activity expects to be just under $16.5 million. That is over $46.5 million less than what we budgeted. But having said all that, what does that mean for the trust account at the end of the year. We are projecting that to be on a cash basis, $582 million. Now, you did hear Harindra say before that it was going to be $645 million on an incurred basis. So when he says incurred, that includes, for example, the contributions that were collected in July of 2025, but were really incurred or earned as of June. And so that's the main driver of the business. But either way, the $582 million certainly is within range of where the contribution fund has been in the past and puts it in a good position. So there's no concerns about being able to pay out benefits or any of the administrative fees or anything like that. So that's where we are at the end of October and where we think we'll be by the end of the fiscal year. I know that was a lot, but I just wanted to make sure I went over that in some kind of detail with the finance committee, as it was the first time we're going over projections. I'm more than happy to take any questions at this time regarding any of the numbers.
I just have one question, Dave. Thanks
Yes,
for the
Mike.
report. So the minimum wage is going up again in January? Is that?
That's correct. Yes, yes.
Okay, so I assume that's all baked into the claims expense.
Yes, we definitely have, we know it goes up every year. We have an assumption in there. That actually should be announcing what it will be in the next few weeks. And so then once we actually know what the rate is, we obviously send that information to Spring if they don't have it already. And then, we could firmly bake in more what the contributions will be.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Just on that note, one thing that's helpful is we went through a period where we had multiple minimum wage changes during the calendar year. And so now we know per the statute that it's going to happen in January and then once a year. So that actually smooths out the projections a bit.
Are there any other questions related to that? Mike, did you have any follow-up for that one?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
All right, thank you. I had one quick question about the IT expenditures. I just wanted to confirm, you're being billed for actuals.
Yes.
Okay. So when you're billed, since you were billed upfront, right, a lump sum for the 12-month period, is there going to be a reconciliation to actuals, or are we going to see it in the following fiscal year?
So
Does my question make sense?
For a sec. Yeah. So I'll start the answer and then Dave can finish. Most IT license subscriptions are billed a year in advance, and so
Okay.
that's part of why we have that big billing in the beginning of the year, because that's the way that industry works.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. That was my only question. All right. Any other questions? I don't see any. All right, thank you, Dave. So we're already on to old business. Anybody have any old business? No. Any new business? No. All right. So may I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I'm assuming that was a not opposed aye. That was an approved aye, so thank you. All right, so the motion carries and we are adjourned at 9:30 on the dot. I hope everybody has a wonderful week next week, if that's your path, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.